Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happy Musician Vlogcast. I am Candace, your happy musician. This is where musicians come to talk. So, my guest today is Vince Tampio, and he is a jack of all musical trades. I don't want to say jack because I feel like that's not really true. You're a professional. You work hard. So you're a producer, you're an engineer, you're a trumpet player, bass player, arranger, composer. I mean, you name it, you're doing it, and apparently you're doing it quite well. So, Vince, thank you for being a guest today on my vlogcast. What have you been up to during this pandemic?
I well, first, thank you for having me. And, all this pandemic. Normally, I'd be performing, but clearly not as much. We did a few outdoor gigs, like less than two or three,
That's
or just two and three, and they were outdoors, and they were they were flexible.
At the
um,
socially distance gigs. And you now before we recorded here, you told me about an album that you were working on.
yes, I finally finished the album Adult Children. That is the most recent of my solo albums, and it's a jazz album, but it's very influenced by world music, and it's jazz fusion. So the rock music kind of creeps in there, and um, it's gotten it's been picked up by some different blogs and playlists as experimental jazz, or even on the edge of progressive rock. So it kind of fits that in between. And I didn't start it in the pandemic. We started the basic tracks, the drums and the bass, live 15 or in 2015. So this year allowed me to have the space to be able to finally finish up the rhythm tracks and the lead tracks, and finish the writing for it and get it out there
Wow.
before before it felt it wasn't as a sign of the times, blanking on the word, as relevant as it could be, um, and under different circumstances.
All right, so someone who your album's been picked up by who?
Um, Specifically, I'm blanking. I don't have that in front of me. But different. It kind of skirts the line between jazz and the rock realm. So it's been on some experimental jazz playlists, and it's been covered by some progressive rock magazines. And yeah,
Sweet.
it felt really good to finish that up. I had another book, a technical studies, chromatic studies book for trumpet, that is basically a collection of dexterity finger exercises geared towards the trumpet. It applies to other instruments, but
Oh, sweet.
that was all finished in 2017. I was just kind of sitting down, and sitting in
Wait,
my files, so I put it all together and put it out there.
yeah, the year of finishing and getting to do the things that take forever to do when you're performing and trying to do all the other things and
Right, yeah, organizing, making sure that um, like I reorganized my discography so that everything is laid out. So apply to something, or because eventually I would like to get onto the like the university or like adjunct level of stuff. So having that as a like, here you go, here's the documentation of what I did on what tracks, whether it be performing or arranging or engineering,
yeah.
all that, just so it's there. And same thing with, I have a master arrangement sheet now, so I've just compiled everything together. So when something comes up, I can reference, like, do I have an arrangement for this? Who did it? Who did I do it for? All that information.
All that information. Yeah, instead of like, let me go dig for it. Hold on, I got it right. Yeah,
I'm
it's
pretty sure I did that one. Did I do that version? Let me check.
let me check. Yeah, I'll get back to you. But like, actually, yeah, it's the whole adulting thing, becoming more efficient, and making sure things are organized, easy to read. I know it's
Yeah, that's part of adult children.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
Which I will now is it who's carrying this? Like where can
Oh, you can get it. It's should be everywhere digitally distributed,
great.
and if you buy physical copies, you can go directly to my site.
Okay.
Um, yeah, because I do short runs on all my albums just so I don't have boxes and boxes of
Well, yeah.
hundreds of CDs, and um, I'd love to put everything on vinyl. They're most of my solo albums are designed to go on vinyl, and I think they would sound better, but I don't have the capital at the moment.
Capital just yet.
I'd
Well,
love maybe reissues down the line, something hits, or like maybe one of the pieces ends up in like on a movie soundtrack or a TV soundtrack, and it's like, oh well, let's reissue this and put it out there.
put it out there. I don't
Yeah,
know. Maybe might do a little Kickstarter to get it all on vinyl
I've
or
thought about a Kickstarter for not my next couple album projects, but maybe the one after that.
one after that. All right. I'll
Maybe
keep an eye. I will put everyone. I will put links. Well, actually, if you're watching the video, you will see the links below the video, that you can purchase Adult Children, and so I will be purchasing it. I thought I did, but I don't know. Maybe I did. I didn't. I know I didn't because I have like my little purchase file and everything, so I was like, it's not in there. But even if I purchase it twice, what's wrong with that? It's all good. So
Yeah.
I will get my copy. Now, I have questions that oh, wait. Before I ask you my questions, you are the founder or one of the founders of what is it? Philly Fatness?
Yeah, fatness.
Okay.
PH.
Yes, fat, pretty hot and tip. No, go ahead. So 80s. I just told my age.
No worries.
So tell me about this. What is it's a ensemble, it's a group, it's a collective of
It's mainly horn players, and it was originally founded between myself and a Barry sax player, or actually a sax player, all around sax player, and we filled in the middle with other instruments, and we've performed with various bands. It we kind of looked at each other one day. We realized we were in, I think, 4 or 5 different groups, and I felt more of the leader because playing the lead trumpet, but also handling a lot of the musical arrangements and the charting, and I was the guy like, here you go, here's what you're gonna play, and we've done some recordings, and the highest profile I think we've been on would be Mitski's "Be the Cowboy."
whoa, okay.
And yeah, that was exciting to come out. But if you listen to the 4 tracks that the horns are on, they're mixed.
Really mixed in.
Yeah, they're mixed in. There's a lot of other textures going on, so it's sometimes difficult to hear through all that texture to hear what the horns are actually doing.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna turn on my ears and see if I can hear you. That's a little personal pet peeve of mine, but there are some times in music, obviously you being a producer would know, where it's necessary and it sounds really good.
Mm-hmm.
But I always like want to hear. I'm like, I want to hear all the instruments. I want to be able to pick them out. But that's the classical musician in me. I think that's my hardcore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, masking happens when you have 2 different instruments that are playing within the same range or tonal kind of characteristics, and they end up, one dominates over the other.
Yeah.
When I mix either my projects or other artists that I help produce and record, I like to make sure that it blends, everything blends together and the arrangements work, but also to make sure that you can pick out each instrument, or at least if there's a specific texture going on, that
Right.
you'd be able to, like, what is that? And if someone said, well, it's this, it's
Right.
a mellophone with a mute in it, you'd be like, now that I know that, I can listen for it and be like, okay, cool. And then what's it blending with? It might be a like a sawtooth synthesizer or something that or another guitar.
Yeah, it happens. It's but
I mean, and you have the harp behind you. I know that can cover a wide range,
it
and
covers the right range.
it can get swallowed up. It can also dominate too. So
Yes, yes. I've my harp's a little older. It's very, very she has a big mouth, as I say.
it's great.
I've been in recording studios and they're like, okay, we're gonna put you in the drum room because you're just blowing out like we can't hear anybody else.
Oh,
Or
so that's unfortunate. I prefer performing and recording in the same
in the
space.
same space, yeah. They're like, is there a way you can mute it? I'm like, well, I was like, you can stick a bunch of carpet under me, like put me on
Yeah,
like a belt,
when we did the drums and the bass, well, for adult children, we set it up in a large room, and we had a drummer in one position, and then we had two percussionists, one on each side, and then a bass player across from the drummer. So it was like a big
Oh,
square,
yeah.
and we rotated the percussionists. So
Ah.
an hour, one drummer, well, one percussionist was on the drums, and then we rotated and rotated. But I didn't want headphones because I feel like it's a different performance.
It
And
is. I've done it with and without headphones. I know the last couple of recordings I've done with headphones, they've actually become a problem. And it actually ended up like some sound actually in the recording got picked up coming out of the headphones, and like you get a weird little echo, or like maybe
yeah,
we had a click track going.
hmm
The click track got picked up.
yeah. Sometimes that's the headphones too, if they're
And it's the
closed back or open.
like the
Um,
headphones we needed to all turn our headphones down, but we had you know it was and well it was a mix. This was like fusion music. We had cello, harp, percussion, voice, and it's awesome. Actually, we're gonna go back and redo it one weekend someday. But
oh,
yeah, but we have to redo it because of the headphones and playing harp with headphones. Like I kept
yeah, you kept bumping into it.
and then I was like, and then it cut off my peripheral vision to my right hand. I was like, oh crap. The headphones like going like this and my hand. I needed to see my hand, but you know,
I imagine it's the same for violinists and violists because it's right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
They do make one-ear headphones. They're very few and they're very tough to find. I do have a pair of them because I always noticed with the trumpet, um, listening through a membrane changes the pitch
Yes.
just so slightly,
Yeah.
and it's just that much. Maybe we're talking a matter of 3 to 5 cents, but it makes a difference, and it tends to push my playing sharp. So I take one ear off, and then you get that bleed problem.
And I think
Not like bleeding, but
right.
bleeding, audible bleed.
Just
Um, I just have the one ear headphone, and I'd show up, and they'd have the headset ready. It's like, nope, plug it in, and I had to get an extension cable for it because it's designed for DJs who would do the one ear thing.
one thing. Honestly, it should be something. I'm surprised it's not something that's standard for all musicians when playing because we need to hear each other and we also need to hear the click track or hear whatever it is. And I'm just surprised that it's not a one-eared headphone. Even just this, just physically trying to play like a cello, like the cellist. I felt bad. Like her cello kept smacking
Mm-hmm.
the headphone. I was like, ah. That
Or
was like,
sometimes you get tangled in the cable.
yeah, like my foot got tangled in it when I was doing a pedal, and I was like, oh, well, hopefully I don't yank this so hard that it.
Pull that, yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
Um, that seems to be a simpler fix. If you put the cable behind your back, then the cable doesn't have to be in front of you.
yeah.
Excuse me. So if it's a long enough cable, but if you have the box here, then maybe you just like put it behind you, and that way you don't run into it.
We're gonna have to like create like some type of petition to like all recording studios one ear, one ear headphones are now standard for all musicians.
If they were wireless, then maybe the wireless might mess with some other signal path.
Yeah, we did. We had a few wireless ones and they did not work. I know the drummer had a lot of problems with the wireless when he was trying to use it, and then
The latency.
it just wasn't working. So we ended up it was too much distortion.
Yeah. I mean, if the room, I think a lot of engineers today are, I think a lot of the engineering that happens today is very, like drums is your most complicated instrument, but when you have guitars and keyboards, it's kind of because it's so common. Speaking as a trumpet player and someone who also plays clearly other instruments, um, I
It's
can't tell you how many times I show up on either a recording session or a gig and a microphone. Well, sometimes it's not even there for live gigs, and
right.
like there's a whole thing. It's like, oh, well, you're gonna carry, right? It's like, no. But I've seen so many different microphone choices, so many different arrays, so many different distances. I think it's just, and that's no fault of them. It's just sometimes they don't know what's going
Yeah,
on with it.
yeah.
They just don't see it as often. And I can imagine like, someone taking a look at your harp and be like, do I mic it like a piano? Like I got the high and the low. It's like probably the best way to do this is just
Yeah.
looking at it probably like 5 to 6 feet away, facing your board there, just like you would a violin, where like the most of the sound comes up and off. So if you put a microphone like 4 feet higher, sort of almost parallel to
Almost
the
parallel.
soundboard.
It's always funny. Not always, but it is funny. Like it's not a lot of people that know, and it is hilarious. I always get it's I can like almost count down to when the sound engineer is going to come to me and go.
Yeah, what do I do? Also, I mean, acoustic instruments are really subject to the room they're in.
Yes, it is.
And, an electric bass, most of the time you record electric bass DI. You're not worried about the sound of the amp. You can reamp it later because the signal's not really going to change much, or run it through a board. Um, the signal path isn't as obvious because it's just not putting its sound out.
Right. It's yeah. But yeah, you're right. It is subject. And I tell people, the guy's like, well, what you're gonna do is you're gonna mic it, and then we're gonna get all set up. We're gonna play, and then you're gonna come and like change everything. And he's
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not joking. Like, you'll figure it out. You're the sound engineer, but I'm just telling you that's just always what happens because it's the room. And that's why I show up early because it's also if the harp is cold, it doesn't amplify very much. If it's when it's warmed up, I mean, it'll just blow people out of the water. You know, if the room is incredibly dry, which recording studios tend to be extremely dry, that affects the sound.
Yeah.
Um, so like you said, they're subject to the room that they're in, and it couldn't be more true about it. So it was fun, but overall, I enjoy help. I appreciate when people ask me, and I appreciate you know t- getting a chance to give people a little mini education on how to record it. But it's it's frustrating when people don't. They're like, oh yeah, I know I'm gonna do it. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't. But
I think I mean if I brought you in for a session, it probably wouldn't be in this room. It's a very small room, or I would pull the carpet up or something,
right,
and then I'm probably like, okay, so what do we have? What are we doing? Let's figure it out. What works for you? I mean, because it's just room and microphones and I saw sight lines. I did a recording too. I did one of my straight ahead album, The Nook. It was an acoustic quintet, like like classic, like Miles Davis second or first quintet type of recording. And one of the first things I did, I had a friend, I approached a friend who's also an engineer, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I also don't want to be in headphones, period, like no headphones.
please.
And I need a room that's good for it. I need a room that also has like we're not isolated. I'm not going to put the drums in their own room, or the piano in its own room. And
Right.
also the piano was important. I wanted because pianos have different characteristics and different tonal characteristics. And
Oh my gosh, you think? Yeah.
so, like there was one that was like one of the rooms was great, but the piano wasn't right. It wasn't the sound I was looking for, and we settled on Elm Street Studios in Conshohocken, and they have I think a Steinway B is what they had, and the drum set up. So I'm standing here with my back to the sound booth, and sax players to my right, and bass players in front of me, and drummers right there, and the pianist is over there, and we can all see each other. We had some, in between stuff, no headphones, and that affected. We just had to think about it, and then figure out how to mix it, so that whatever bleed happened in obvious places.
Right, yeah. See, and that's the way. At least, okay, my own personal opinion. Obviously, we're in agreement. That's the way it should be recorded, like you would perform it. But to each his own. However it works. All right. So I've got my questions. A few are like mean and evil. No, they're not. So some are. Most of them are not too bad. So but the questions I ask everyone, and I love asking everyone the same questions because the answers always are, to me, exciting and different. So first one is, what are you currently reading? I have a stack of books here that I probably should be reading, but anyway, what are you reading? And 1 or 2, 3, I read 5 books at a time. It's a really bad habit, but
I don't read as much as I probably like to, but currently I am reading between 2 books. And the first one is, let me see, I have some notes here just to make sure I keep myself. So if you see me looking down, that's why. I'm reading Victor Wooten's The Music Lesson.
Oh. How is that?
It was good. It was, so backstory, it was given to me by a pianist that I'd worked with on a few gigs, and it just showed up in the mail. I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's good. It's sort of, it's more of a narrative.
Yes.
So it works through, like, he finds this this musical guru that will show him different things, and they decide on sort of distilling music into 10 elements, and it's very metaphorical for not just music but also just life and being open to taking all that in and putting the energy out there, like tone and feel and rhythm. I'm still in the middle of it. I'm trying not to read it too quickly so I have time to process what's going on.
Process it, yeah. I read it a while ago. I think I read it too fast, and I think it was also, I was reading another book, 2 other books with it, which I feel like that book itself has enough weight to it where you probably shouldn't do what I did.
Some of it sounds unbelievable, and I'm not sure. I haven't looked into whether or not it's embellished or if it's more like the way it's presented is to prove a point.
Let me know what you find, because I felt the same way about some things in the book as well. It's like, I don't know about that. And so if you do any research and you find that some things are embellished or not embellished, like, I like to know, because I did have the same feeling. It's
yeah.
But it's in
some of the exercise, like I just finished rhythm, the whole exercise of feeling the pulse.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever been in a group with a group of people and they're all clapping on beats, every beat, and they're like, okay, every other beat, and okay, everyone on the one, and then we're talking 30 to 50 people, and you have to keep counting. Okay, now every 2 measures, everyone hits on the one, and eventually there is this collective. Well, when it first starts, like, everyone flams, and you get someone who's like way off, and eventually it does sort of line up, and you get this nice solid beat. But and that's for working on time and pulse and making sure that I practice to a metronome every time I pick up the trumpet. I have a metronome and a tuner, and I practice with a metronome. Sometimes I put the metronome, because a lot of jazz, I put the metronome on 2 and 4, or I'll put it on beat 4, or I might put it on just beat 1. And
I'm going to take what you just said, and I'm going to send it to every one of my students. I practice with the metronome every time.
I actually have 2 of these. Yeah, right here. This one. That's upside down. But I lost one, and or I left it at a session, and I was lost without it practicing, so I bought another one until I picked up the other one. So one lives in the case, one lives right at the at my desk.
because
But
you
it's
need.
also, it's not just being strictly in time and metronomic. Sometimes there's a feel involved, and you want to push that feel. Like
Yeah,
if you put the metronome on beats 1 and 3, it's going to transfer different than 2 and 4. Like,
absolutely.
because you're going to stretch differently, and um, the whole with jazz and a lot of music like blues and soul and um,
It's a
and significant amount of rock, you don't feel it on 1 and 3.
no.
And if you do, I can usually tell when someone's feeling on those, I guess the strong beats instead of the back beats. Um,
mean,
and it
I'm
bothers me.
probably one of those people that would, because I'm so classically trained, I probably would feel it on the strong beats first, and then I would start to pick it up a little bit later. But that's why I listen to a lot of stuff. Whenever I have to play something bluesy or on the jazz spectrum, I listen
Hmm.
to it as many different recordings as I can, a lot, so that I don't get caught up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, different instruments too. They almost always, the lower the instrument, the more anticipating or on top of the beat you want to be.
Yeah.
And
It's,
then the higher you are, the higher instrument you play, or if you're looking at a piano, you tend to uh, you anticipate
yeah.
maybe the left hand, and then you would kind of lay back on the right hand, so you have this sort of, and maybe also if you're playing in an orchestra too, or a symphonic band like I grew up playing in, um, the distance from you and the conductor, and then ultimately where the sound combines,
Yes.
changes how you play. Like I was always on top of the beat because I was third row back, and like trying to push my sound to equalize with the clarinets. And then it's even worse with the low brass because they're not necessarily directional. They're just like a tuba. The
Right.
sound's going straight up,
Straight
or the
up.
French horn is going behind. Um, so I think that makes a big difference. And then, but being able to practice with a metronome right either in front of you or sometimes behind me, I practice with a metronome because that way I hear it from behind, and then my sound is coming out the other direction. Um, I can push and pull and decide, do I want to be behind the beat or on top of the beat? And that comes into play, especially in recording sessions.
I'm gonna try that. I don't think I've ever. If I practice with my metronome behind me, it was purely by accident. I've never done it purposefully,
Hmm.
but I'm gonna try it now because and yeah, I've done it, but simply because I was in a room where the table was behind me, and that's where I had to
Yeah.
put the
Or
metronome.
you put it like next to your ear, your opposite ear, for
Right.
wherever you're playing. When you get the other side of that, the other side of the metronome is the tuner. And if I have the tuner in front of me, it's competing with the sound that I'm putting out there. So
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
so I put the tuner behind me, and because I tune both by looking at the tuner, which would be the equal temperament,
Right.
and then I also tune to drones a lot, to sort of, because the ratios of
Are
the
slightly
fifth to the root, the 3/4 ratio, or all the harmonics that happen, they're not equal temperament.
right.
And the brat trumpet's not necessarily an equal temperament instrument, even though it does and it doesn't. So I think, yeah, I practice with equal temperament, and then I think just tonic would be the other one that I practice too.
An experience I don't have, but now I'm going to be aware of that. Yeah, I don't have. I've never practiced with it. I've never practiced with it. I never had to, but I guess with when instruments uh, you do. My ear is sensitive because I do have to, as I play, I can hear. I definitely start. I mean, all of ours are, but mine's I feel like it's a little bit more sensitive. I can sit next to harpist and play, and I'm like, yeah, you're E flat, or you need to tighten it up a bit, or maybe it's not even flat. It's just that
Yeah.
string is dead, or I can tell like your string's dead. You need to put on it, something weird things like that. But I'm gonna remember that. All right,
Yeah.
what was the second book you're reading? You're reading two books, right?
Oh, the second book is it's another musical book. It's let me see, because I have it over here. It is The Drums of Voodoo.
Oh, I've never heard of it. So who's that by?
This is by Lois Wilkin.
And
And
so what's the story behind this book, The Drums of Voodoo?
so it seems it reads more like sort of an academic thesis,
Okay.
and I think it was more about um, again, I'm reading different books, so I might be a little fuzzy. She's decided that she's going to study voodoo rhythms, and there isn't much going on writing about it at the time. So she took lessons with, um, you know, Frisner there, the man on the cover, holding the book. This is actually a hard book to find in print. So I mainly bought it because I was working on an arrangement that involved a lot of voodoo rhythms. And in the book, there are transcriptions, and it kind of walks you through the historical migration from Haiti to New York and the traditional instruments, but also the replacement of those instruments because you don't necessarily get them in New York or wherever you are,
Huh.
and and sort of the traditional um, role of those instruments and what they represent. And I decided to pick it back up because the next album project I'm working on, my next sort of
Ah.
larger scale, I want to do longer works, sort of based around some of the drone instruments. Like I have a tanpora and I have a shruti box hanging in the wings, and a singing bowl, and a lot of different world instruments from different cultures. And
So you want to incorporate these all to your next album?
yeah, in different expressions. So having sort of a inspire. I'm not necessarily. I don't want to necessarily call to their spirits, or do something wrong. But I want to use it as an inspiration, sort of as an overall suite, and we pick and choose sort of grooves, and sometimes grooves can function as drones.
Sometimes they can.
Yeah, so I'm sort of bending the whole notion of that.
I
Plus, it's
think.
going to be a double album, and the kind of like the way that I guess Spotify is affecting our
Uh,
ways of releasing is like I want to put out a 20-minute piece and
right.
another 20-minute piece. That's the whole album. No, that's an EP. It's like, no, it's a whole album. So to balance it out with some longer form and
Longer.
then also some shorter form, and
Sweet.
work with that. And that's
Mm.
I'm making sure that when I go through anything in terms of any fusion, whether it be, you know, jazz with world or jazz with rock, I want to have a fairly solid grasp over what I'm doing. I don't want to go into it um, without having done some research, even though it might not be an exact representation of voodoo drumming within the music. It I know where it comes from, and I'm making sure that um, I'm celebrating where that culture is coming from, but also applying it to my musical voice and my musical filter, and to put something out that I find engaging and that hopefully others do too.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it. I mean, it sounds like it's gonna be pretty awesome. And yeah, you do have to do the research. You want to make sure that you have enough information to respect the instrument, to respect where it's coming from and everything like that. So it's important. I like to research stuff when I'm playing too. Like it's really cool. I find out things about composers. It's really cool to find out about recent composers that are still alive. I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, motive and where they're at, or whether physically or
Yeah, where they're
mentally,
at,
or
how they came to write the piece they're writing. I'm always that always is really cool to me. Even if I never meet them, but it's really cool. But speaking of
call them
pieces,
up.
I have sent a couple emails like, "Hey, I read about this piece and it spoke to me." This, I was like, okay, I was like, I feel like such a stalker, but I'm gonna write it anyway. And then, but it ends up, they reply, thank you. I like your take on it. I like the fact that you actually, respect the process, and that's what it is. I like to hear about the process. I think it's really cool. So, but speaking of that, what is your favorite piece to play or pieces? And this is such a horrible question to ask
Oh,
or a vocalist, but I ask it anyway.
I
So
know. I I do not have an answer. The shorter answer is I don't have a piece
you don't
that
have, well,
that I
that's
pertain to.
the answer.
That's the short answer. The long answer is I feel like, um, especially recently, this recent year, getting in touch with musical roots. Like I feel like everyone has their roots, and um, so I grew up in I guess I grew up in a small town kind of thing. No, literally though, a village, the village of Silver Creek, and I think at the time, like I graduated
Silver Creek, where?
Silver Creek, New York.
Little tiny. Okay, so
So
I.
it's like south of Buffalo, and it's on Lake Erie,
Oh
and
my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wait a minute. No way.
it's near Fredonia.
I've been. I think I have been there. I'm not kidding.
Exit 58 off of the thruway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um. I was in my teens. I went to school. I started out at D'Angelo Conservatory of Music, Mercer's College,
Yeah. Okay.
and I think we had one kid that at least one kid that I knew was from there, and I think I
You know
went.
their name because it's that small of a town.
Um, I think her name was Anna, but we called her Anne. Um,
My sister. It's funny because my sister's name is Anna.
oh my god, it's yeah. She was let's see. I mean, I was 17. She was 18. It's a really long time ago. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember. I don't think I stayed very. I think literally I just went in, visited her home and left, and then she
Yeah,
was
just drove through. It's not it's got one light.
that was the thing. I was just, and me being from Philadelphia at the time, I was just, and growing up in the city, I just was like, "There's
Yeah.
no, was that the only light?" She's like, "Yeah," and then because we didn't stay, I think we went to our house, picked up something, and then we went back to school, and that was that. I didn't see much of it, but I'm pretty sure it was Silver Creek because I know that when we were driving, I was just like, "This is getting more and more."
Yeah.
Like,
A
are
lot
we?
of time to practice.
Yeah.
Heavy winters. But so my parents, when they got married, for example, their first major purchase was a stereo system, and I
Cool.
still have components from that system. The most of them still exist. The receiver, I think, made it through a couple lightning storms,
Oh my god.
but the record player still exists, and the speakers I still have.
Wow.
So there was always more of an emphasis on music or sound versus the TV. We were always behind on TVs. Um, for a long time, we didn't even have cable or anything. But that being said, there's my musical roots are reflective of what was playing in the house. So there was a lot of jazz. There was a lot of my dad's a big band fan, a
Ah,
big band fan,
a big-
and my mom's like she comes out of folk music and a lot of the singer songwriters because they came of age in the 70s, so they also
yeah.
heard a lot of the late 60s, so there's a lot of rock, and of course me being a horn player, I'm gonna find stuff with horns in it, so there's a sort of exploring a lot more funk and soul and blues to a degree.
Whoa.
Plus the right across the lake is Toronto, and they have one of the best, in my opinion, jazz stations. And
Yeah.
they played a lot of different stuff. Saturday afternoons would be jazz with a twist. It'd be a lot of Latin
I listened. That's what I listened to when I was up there in the week because I couldn't go home on the weekends and stuff, and I was during the week. It was great, and we used to go to Toronto. We would drive over to legally drink, but we would drive over there but to hear the music. They had a
Drive
great.
over the Peace Bridge.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, it's still there. So I feel like um, I'm very fortunate to have a diverse set of roots and roots that are beyond, that transcend culture, and a lot of the music that comes out of that particular music is not necessarily um, I don't even know if there's a term like it's not out of one culture and it's not out of one background, and it always celebrates the joining and of different cultures and different perspectives, and it together moving forward rather than just sitting in one place. And
Right.
and I mean there's other music. I mean I play an Irish um I I play in a band that plays Irish music. He's from Dublin, and there's a lot of traditional Irish music, especially around
Wait, you play
March.
trumpet in this band?
I do play some trumpet. But when I'm not playing trumpet, I play a six-string banjo.
That is so cool.
Yeah, so which works out because I have the guitar background. It's
Right.
tuned the same way as a guitar. I'm sorry, the five-string banjo for me is just any any instrument that doesn't have consecutive strings doesn't
Gotcha.
make sense to me. Like a ukulele or a banjo with like, or even a dulcimer to a degree. When if it's not tuned in sequence, when there's like, you
Yeah.
know, it, it's just I don't. That's not how I think about it. I think about it more as a grid versus hand
Ah,
positions. So that music comes a lot out of, I mean, we're talking hundreds of years of folk music and
yeah, that's a deep, deep history there. Yeah.
yeah, and that's a very cultural. I mean, they're, you know, if you've been to Ireland, like actually with that band, we don't just play Irish music, we also play a lot of his originals, and his originals are very influenced by Americana and folk and then classic rock. So there's a lot of that's, and New Orleans music too. That's where the trumpet really kind of slots in.
Gotcha.
And but for example, like if you're there, there's um, a lot of different neighborhoods and different areas in Ireland that they've constantly been occupied by
Uh,
like Vikings and different Vikings and I want to say like
and
the
Lord.
Druids, and I mean technically there's still like Northern Ireland is still part of the UK, so there's still not a,
Oh wait, who? Oh, who just got their independence though? Really recently? That wasn't Ireland. That was it part of Scotland. Maybe I'm confused.
I'm not sure. I remember hearing something about Scotland voting on a referendum to leave the UK.
Yeah, I think they got it. I think and it was quite recent, like less than 10 years ago.
Mm.
So, but
I've seen Scotland.
I've
I'm
never.
like northern, yeah, Northern Ireland. I think near what is it? Um, it's not the Devil's Causeway, is it?
Oh, you would know better than. I mean, is it as beautiful as everyone says it is?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, we were on a. It was the first day or first couple of days we were there, and for us to fly over overnight and then hit the ground with
That's a long
Irish
day.
coffees and like I think it was like a 27-hour day,
Ah,
and you're like, where are we?
where
um,
are we? What time is it?
it's Giant's Causeway. It's Giant's Causeway, which is a very there's a lot of rock formation that are actually geometric rocks, and there's a whole story behind it. But as we were driving back towards between there and Belfast, we stopped at a certain point. We're like, okay, if you look over there past like, see that little strip, that's Scotland. Looks just like an island that's green. So hey, um,
I mean, me being a harpist, yes, I always wanted to go to Ireland and Scotland and.
a lot of so it's interesting. We I know we're getting a little off the topic of musical roots because I'm not Irish. I know I'm wearing green. I play in a band led by a Dublin native. Um, I'm not necessarily, that's not where my ancestors come from
from,
that I
from
know of. Although I have some English ancestors, so they're not far.
I have some
But
ones, but I don't know where they're from.
I'm curious on that. But oh right, so the violinist cellist that I was with, because we were as a quartet, and then we also brought a bunch of people from United States as a cultural bridge kind of thing. We go around the day touring like different sites, and then we did the ancient East, so like all the east side of Ireland, and then at night we would perform, and we would and we'd see his family and hang out, and a lot of I'll get into the pace of that tour later if you want.
Later,
But
on.
on some of the downtime, we would go seek out music stores, and some of the instruments that they have over there, especially in the smaller towns, like I think want to say Kilkenny was one of them.
All right.
They would have some interesting like bazookies, which are like if you want to think of it as a larger dulcimer, not
Yeah.
dulcimer, a larger mandolin. They have we tried out a mandola, which is a mandolin, but it's in the range of a viola.
Wow.
They had a lot of very interesting stringed instruments, like small harps too, like little
Yeah,
little
full harps are
tabletop.
not really indicative. Yeah, they're full harps are what you're gonna find over there. But yeah, mandolins,
Yeah.
dollars. The how did you guys? I mean, were you offered the chance to utilize these on your tour at all?
No, it's not like we went and bought them at the store and then returned them later. I was mainly curious at what used brass instruments they had, and because we were there for 10 days, and it wasn't until we finished the last couple days in Dublin itself, and there were more shops, and I finally got a perspective on it. It's like Ireland doesn't have a history of producing brass instruments. It was always imported, so you're not going to find like around America, there's a lot of like that trumpet back there. That was made in California at the old Canstel factory, and you'll find that in maybe an estate sale or in a store, and you can find a lot of used instruments, but because they didn't necessarily have the manufacturing there,
Right.
you don't. So you find a lot of the stringed instruments. You find a lot of instruments that are made of wood. A lot of different banjos too. Do you know that there is a 12-string banjo?
I did not know there's a 12-string banjo.
And if you can imagine the tuning difficulties of a banjo and a 12-string guitar, that's a 12-string electric behind it. You can imagine it stays in tune maybe for like 40 seconds and then something goes out.
What are the strings on a 12-string banjo? Like, what are?
I want to say they're tuned the same way as a 12-string guitar.
Get out!
Yeah.
That is wild. I would like go cross-eyed trying to play. Well, I would go cross-eyed trying to play a 12-string guitar too. But like
They're grouped. I mean, it's like a mandolin as the strings are grouped. They're grouped in pairs. Also found out recently that there are 12-string baritone guitars, which is just like that's the baritone behind me right there, a little bit longer than
but
like 12-string electric, 12-string baritone, and then the bass, and have other instruments. But
wild.
it's crazy because I'm like so coming back to musical roots, my mom recently passed on the 12-string acoustic to me. I don't want to say it like she didn't pass or anything, but she is like, I had this for 40 years. Here you go, have it. So I have a 12-string acoustic guitar, and that's more or less the first guitar that I learned on. Also, it's tuned in D standard, so that messed with me a little bit, which doesn't alternate tunings and multiple strings, and like the baritone's tuned to B standard. That doesn't phase me because I can make the transposition. Also, having played a B flat instrument, and you're like, oh, that's not actually the sound that's coming out. It's just it's not like I always played non-transposing instruments.
Non-transposing. But so you don't have a favorite song, but that's right. But you do have a very diverse background in your musical interest and your instruments. I mean, you're definitely tasting all the flavors there. And why should I mean?
I don't do much with woodwinds.
Well, I know.
but I think the every ensemble that I'm in, obviously not recently, but every ensemble that I'm involved with kind of satisfies one of those roots or groups of roots. York Street also being soul and southern soul, and on the rhythm and blues spectrum. I have my own jazz projects, and whether they be through the albums or when we perform, the folk and the rock, and then with John Byrne Band, and two more. And U2U is like funk and disco, and sort of has a little bit of sort of 90s alternative.
So you get to taste all your flavor. I mean, you get to. It sounds like you're in a really good position, or you're very good at, feeding all of your interest, separately and all, and in groups and at the same time. It's like I think that's pretty awesome, because a lot of musicians, they don't know how to, or they just don't do it. But
I, I was just talking with my wife about yesterday on when we were driving around. I was like, it's like thinking about doing like not necessarily a community orchestra because um
it can be intense.
it can, yeah, it can be intense, but I don't think I'm not on the level of playing in like Philadelphia Orchestra. I wouldn't say that, but I do miss a little bit of playing with uh, classical strings and wind instruments, and having that repertoire, because growing up, even though it was Silver Creek, I was in the band program, and that's how you learn the instrument. You started from the summer before fourth grade, and if you wanted to continue um, all the way through senior year or beyond, that's what you were in. That was the flagship. You were in the concert band. So I mean, I think we met in a pit orchestra,
We did. We did.
and I was playing trumpet with that, right?
Yes, you were playing
Okay.
trumpet, and I thought at one point you subbed on guitar at like kind of an emergency. I thought you did. I could be wrong. Um,
Yeah. So often what I do is I also have an E flat mellophone, which speaks very similar to a French horn. So I said to our musical directors, like, hey, we don't have a French horn, but I know there's a French horn part. I can see it in the cue. Um, I'll play it. But there was one year, I don't think you were on this one, that there wasn't a trumpet part. It was
no, I
it
don't
was
think I was
it
on
was
that.
Charlie Brown.
No, I didn't do the Charlie Brown. There's no hard part for Charlie
Yeah,
Brown. No, I didn't do that one, but I think it was the sound. Was it the Sound of Music we were doing?
it must have been. It was either that or Into the Woods.
Yeah, one of the I can't remember, but it wasn't that long ago, or you can't remember.
But yeah, with the Charlie Brown, she approached me. She's like, we want you to be in the pit, but there's no trumpet book. Do you want to do percussion, or there's a bass part? And I was like, let me look at the bass part. And I ended up playing the whole show on bass.
Oh,
And
man. Sweet.
luckily, I was lucky enough to bring in another peer of mine to come in and play percussion, and not just kit, but also different mallets and that kind of stuff. And it was a very, talk about role reversal, and very different animal, and we had a lot of fun with it. And just to have that foundation, because a lot of pit orchestras don't necessarily have especially high schools, they don't necessarily have the budget to have full instrumentation.
No, they don't. So yeah, if you have a diverse background and you can hop from instrument to instrument, it helps a lot.
Yeah,
It helps them, and helps you too. But
yeah, and then they call again, and it's like, yay, I want to keep doing it. But yeah, so trying to get involved with different projects that um that I don't want to say satisfy, but like get
feed your thirst, so to speak.
yeah, they kind of refuel and like hit all the levels and make sure that
Yeah, you need to do that. I mean, it's part of being an artist. We have to, it's a little bit selfish, but but the selfishness, we regurgitate it and it feeds the world. It's not totally a bad thing.
well,
So
yeah, also, I mean, if you're talking about thriving or surviving as a professional artist,
oh yeah,
you kind of have to work in different realms, and that's part of what attracted me to music, was that I'm not suited for doing the same thing day in, day out, and then
not really yet.
leaving it at work and coming home. And even I had an engineering. I worked at a post production house making TV commercials and radio commercials, and even that was a little bit. The corporate structure was a little bit tough for me, and I want, maybe like today, and maybe I'll work on comping drum tracks for something, and then I'll practice, or the next day I'll be, instead of engineering, I'll be working on some arrangement or orchestration or something, or traveling too, and seeing, in normal circumstances, seeing different people and having
Right. Yeah.
communication and discussing, and not only verbally, but also through our instruments.
Yeah. Doing a broadcast. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's no, but it's. I'm the same way. Yeah. I totally understand what you mean. It's the redundantness is just not something that feeds you. It's something that actually just starts to suck the life out of you after a while. It's like,
but you
Yeah,
don't move forward. That's something my dad said to me. I don't know, probably when I was in college, is like people do a really good job of changing up until about like their mid 20s.
your dad's right.
Yeah, and I the stagnation is sort of, I don't want to say it this way because it's kind of morbid, but it's kind of the death of creativity. It just nothing else. You're just rehashing through what you're doing, and that's it. You're not growing, you're not sharing, and that's part of. I teach too, and I want to make sure that I'm still learning from
Right.
my students too.
It makes a big difference, and it's really, and it's extremely important, and I couldn't agree with you more on that. And your dad is like, he's very right. I have acquaintances and I have old friends, and that we're not really as close as we're, just because I'm like, well, I want to keep doing this, and I want to keep learning, and I want to keep evolving, and it's just every day I'm like, oh, what else is new? So I got a stack of books here with post-its sticking out of them, and I've got a stack of music with post-its sticking out and out of the
Hey,
pages.
you can't see my stacks of stuff, or even just for me pursuing different
Fine, I won't
instruments. And
say mine. It's all scary, but yeah, it's that thirst, and that I think that's really one of the unique things that sets musicians apart. Um, Musicians and artists in general, people in performing arts, apart from other professions, is that um, we, in order to be successful, and in order to, we don't have a choice. We must make the decision every day to evolve, because that choice feeds the creativity. It feeds your stamina, it feeds the discipline, that feeds everything you need to continue to be the artist that you want to be. And I I thrive on that. I tried the corporate. It didn't go very. I mean, I was really good at my job, and everybody loved me. And I was like, you just don't know how much I hate this right now.
I don't know how many people necessarily love what they do either.
Yeah, it's a lot of people actually that don't love what they do. And somewhere along the line, someone made up, society kind of made this rule. Well, what you have to do to pay the bills can't be fun. And I'm just like, well,
Yeah, there is a pressure on that, and I wouldn't. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't something I think about from time to time.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think about it, and but same thing. We get creative, and we're able to think on our feet. I think, in order to be like, okay, well, didn't see the car that was good. The car broke down on me, and I really need my car. So what do I need to
didn't see
do?
a pandemic either, but
But then it kind of helps that,
I remember early on, sort of listening to critiques or reading about stuff, and them thinking about the creative, because that's where we are. I guess the gig economy, or I don't know exactly what it is, but I mean, I've been doing this. I left that engineering job in 2014,
Okay.
and because I reached a point where I was just looking at my schedule, and I was like, I'm going to use all my vacation days, and
I'm out.
but I was also at a point where like I'm starting to earn more than I would if I was kept this job. I also came in really, I came in very young, and there's just like, let's just throw more money than he's ever seen before. And then in 2 years, I never got any sort of review or raise or anything. And different story. But anyway, just having to be creative about, like, sometimes we're working and it's just you're busier than like you can't even sleep. You have to, but there are other times where there's nothing going on, or there's very little, and you have to think, well, okay, what do I pay attention to? What do I refresh? What do I like? Was something that, can I rethink this angle, or is there something else I'd like to do here? And then kind of put it in motion. And hopefully you're able to do that by looking far enough ahead, be like, okay, 6 months down the line, I need to make sure that something's in place that, it carries me through. And
Carries you through. Yeah, we do have to think quite far in the future, because our profession does have a lot of hills and uptime, downtime. The hills and the valleys are kind
and
of.
this last year was,
This year's been in a valley for a
it's
lot.
it was the uncertainty that mostly pushed on me.
The
It's like,
uncertainty, yeah, I can understand that. How did you? I mean, how did you deal with that uncertainty? What, how,
Well, obviously, a lot of my performances had gone away. The evaporated, I feel like is a good term. But I do, because I do other things, and I whether it be the composing, arranging, or the engineering, producing, um, teaching. Also, I also work part time at at A minor tune up in Wilmington,
okay,
doing brass repair and cleaning, and that's something of like that's it's not a musical route, but it's something I grew up with like a wood shop, but this is now metal, and
right,
it's a really cool aspect of the industry that I want to like get better at doing. And so just kind of thinking of like, okay, so there's those 4 or 5 pillars. This one is just, can't rely on it, but I have the other things going on that I
right.
can invest into, and then spend time sort of plotting the return of all that. But that's the thing with the uncertainty is we didn't know, and we still don't know exactly when,
No,
venues are going to be the last thing that go back online. It's,
venues are
I
gonna be
mean, like not online as internet, but um,
well opening up for
yeah,
concerts and things. It's if they're not outdoor. I mean, if outdoor venues will get a little bit, they'll open up first, but
yeah.
yeah, like places like the Kimmel Center and Wilma Theater and Carnegie Hall. Those are it's going to be a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's entertainment. It's we are somewhat subject to the tastes of people, and if people are like, I can't afford to do this or that, how am I? There's no budget for that. I mean, even
So,
with the
but
city
yeah,
budget last year, we're like, I mean, I guess it made sense to cut the budget to be like, well, we're not going to do any like live stuff, and we need to divert the money into other things. It's really not a lot of money to divert, but I
the
get
lights
it.
on, but
It also helped supporting us, but then then other stuff came into play, and
it's
yeah.
pretty.
So I don't know. I've been up and down about the outlook of things, and I just try to stay positive and move forward, and
It's all you can really. Well, that's not all you can do. I mean, but it's that's one of the things that I mean. I always wanted to do the vlogcast, but when this everything hit, I was like, oh, I got to start talking to musicians and see what they're doing, and let other musicians, hear and get glimpses into what their fellow musicians are doing at this time, or what they're not doing, or what they've learned, or what they're learning, because
yeah.
we we're all doing something a little different, but we're all in the same boat. So it's nice to get a different view of things. And even through the vlogcast, just having these vlogcasts, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about other musicians. Definitely has made my book reading list super super long. Um, uh,
Well,
music.
um, sorry.
No,
To that effect, I mean, I watched a little bit of Stan from Play on Philly, and because October 2019, yes, I joined in with Play on Philly. I was brought in to teach at Free Charter Middle School, teaching their middle school trumpet sections,
cool.
and
I
which is
subbed.
great because it's I'm teaching something I know really well, and I'm to get towards the goal of having more of an adjunct or college level professorial type of position. I need teaching experience in the classroom, and
Yeah, you do. They do like that on the resume.
I mean it's not just about that. It's not just like a stepping stone. It's a great organization, and it fits with the sort of the ethos of you know bringing in people from different perspectives and moving in together and moving in the same direction, or like just it's great for that. It's great on so many levels too, and bringing
What they're doing is
music.
needed. I mean, Philly needed them and needs them. I mean, he pretty much Philly pretty much just started cutting everything, and he said, "Well,
Yeah,
fine. I'm just gonna try to put back everything you're cutting." And
yeah.
in a nutshell,
So
that's
that was the spirit of how it began, and then with everything shutting down, the serious pivot that we had to do as educators. We tried a few things, and then we moved on online, and then and there Play on Philly is still teaching and expanded its roster and as outreach, and it's still like the online learning is still a little bit difficult. Um,
It must
I'm
be.
not actually teaching with them right now because they have so many great teachers, and I want to say there are around 30 teaching artists, and
Oh wow, yeah.
maybe like you just can't use everyone. You can't utilize everyone, and because I had the engineering background, when this all kind of came about, when the pandemic came about, I said, okay, well, if we can't do the live performances, this was literally like 2 days before everything shut down. We were supposed to have a concert on like that Friday in March when everything shut down, and this is Wednesday. It's like, okay, here's what we do, because we've been, every program has been gearing towards their own concert. Um, I want to say it was Frieri and St. Francis. They were gearing towards their concerts. It's like, okay, here's what we do. Let's record them, treat it like a studio recording session where we record them. We're not necessarily in front of an audience. We document the process and the result of that process, and then I will handle the audio portion of it. It's like, send me the files, and I'll make sure it's all level and everything comes together.
Wow, look at you.
And then everything shut down. But luckily, after they got the recordings, and then fast forward, I'm handling the virtual performances that they do. I do the audio production for.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't even know you were doing that.
So yeah, so when you see, if you check out, they recently did a recital. I'm not sure if it's up on YouTube yet, but if you do any of the virtual performances like winter 2020
Yeah.
or summer, the essential process, the production process, is all of the students at some point have to record themselves playing, whether it be on a computer, a tablet, just straight audio, a phone, more frequently. And so all those videos, they get posted somewhere, and then I download the videos, strip out the audio,
Right.
and then make sure everything realigns and it all comes together and it sounds good, and then mix and master it, and then send it over to their video editor. And then because I can't do the video editing that to the level he does, and then we put all this together, and it becomes a presentation. And even though I'm not teaching, I'm still very involved.
Well,
And
yeah, you're giving the kids back their music essentially because they're still taking lessons, but I'm
mm,
pretty sure being able to see that what you and the video guy did. I mean, if I was a kid, I'd be giddy. I'd be like, "Oh my
yeah,
god, we actually did a real music video!" Like to me, I would be off the wall, like just
they're also recording in isolation, so they're recording just their part. And
yeah.
often there is a playback and there's a reference, so they're reading the music and listening to it, and just playing their part, and they don't hear everything else.
That's what I'm saying. Like yeah. And when that comes across, oh my gosh, I'd be like, "All
Like,
right,
oh, it fits together, it works. Like especially the chamber recital, because it's a lot of small. I think the largest ensemble is maybe 5 or 6, and the
got it."
smallest being 3. And when you're that exposed as an instrument, you just don't know what else is
No,
going
no,
on.
yeah.
Like, what do these measures rest for? I don't know. We're just, I'm just hanging out. Make sure you count, okay? So you come in when you're supposed to.
Yeah, you're a kid trying to make it work, and the kids are trying to pivot with the teachers, and then you put it all together for them, and then you're like, all right, remember all that recording and weird stuff you kind of did?
Yeah.
Here it is, and they're just like,
And then also learning from it, because I mean, no process is perfect.
oh no,
Sometimes some students they're not recording to a playback, and they're just kind of working through it. And others, you can hear the playback, and um, seeing sort of the final result, and you do this a few times, you're like, oh right, we're basically um, in a bubble, kind of showing them how a lot of studio recordings are put together.
right? They're learning really fast how right. They're getting a taste. I mean, they're getting a taste of everything. It's pretty. You're teaching them something about. You're teaching them something about music. Probably never even thought you were going to teach them.
Yeah. It
And
was
they're
funny. Funny story though. The first time we did any virtual performance, we did it as the um, it was mostly teaching artists, so it was mostly us, and I want to say there were some kids in there, but because it was May last year, and we just like, it was so fresh, and just to mobilize everything, we could do it for the teachers, but not necessarily for the full students. So we did something where we played, I think it was close to a 10-minute piece, and a lot of this, a lot of the TAs are classical, and a lot of times, and this is just it happened to be so weird because what I noticed was the playback, the reference track was out of tune.
Oh
So it
no.
was something like, let's just say 4 or 5 cents off. Now, I noticed that, but the majority of everyone else didn't. And so they just pitched themselves to the recording.
Right.
But
Well, that's what I would do. Yeah.
but because I do so much overdubbing, not just for myself, but for others, I do have a bad habit of having a tuner close by. And I made sure that I was in tune with
And
equal temperament.
oh,
So when I got everything to work with, I was out of tune.
right. I was about to say you were out of tune. You were the only one in tune, and everybody else was out.
But I was and I was some of the other I think Anna said something like, I don't even know how you did that. Like how could you do that? I was like, a lot of practice over
Right,
time.
over time.
So I had to do a little bit of some
Whoa.
studio stuff where I actually took my audio and just pitched it just a little bit in the tune. And I'm revealing so many secrets,
That's a long 10-minute piece. You had to do
yeah.
that. Oh my
But
god.
I mean, it's to pitch it up wasn't that bad.
Okay.
Sometimes we get instruments that are tuned to themselves, like stringed instruments or
Yeah,
harps.
we do that. Yeah, they do that a lot. Yeah.
They're tuned to themselves, and they're in tune with themselves, but they might be a quarter tone flat.
Right. Exactly.
So I have some tools that I can push that pitch up without it being so obvious. We've done that in other recordings where like an accordion's tuned to four um like 444, and to get that back down to 440 is
Right.
it's a challenge. It's not always it doesn't always sound the best,
The
but
best, but at least they don't sound out of tune. You won't have someone go, "What is that?"
yeah, you got to work with it sometimes. But anyway, that's probably as far as I should go with some of the production secrets behind
Yeah,
those
don't tell me any
performances.
more secrets. But I think also you might have gotten yourself a job because I have to get my students recorded and get stuff. So you'll be getting an email from me, and we'll have to chat about
Yeah,
that.
well, yeah, we can figure out. I've been doing it for every virtual performance since all this began. I don't know if we're gonna continue doing it when everything is back in person, but I'm looking forward to being back in person. I'm getting charged up to be like, because I also have private trumpet students and teaching out of different books and just making sure that I'm restructuring and figuring out the curriculum that would work best for that age group and the pacing and the physical and
Yeah.
just making it like I'm looking forward to getting back in and saying,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
here we are,
In person is very much
putting that
different
back together.
than the online learning, and yeah, it's. I can understand why you would totally be ready for that.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm talking. So I totally forgot my other questions. Okay, wait.
We got
My
the reading, we got the what do I do?
the reading favorite piece. Well, you don't have a favorite piece. My next question is, what two people have been most influential to you and why? And I'm pretty sure I know who you're gonna say, but
So I have a couple people, and it might not necessarily be the people that I mentioned. I decided for this because there are many influences. There are many more that time does not permit to even mention.
I know. Well, I think that's every musician. I mean, we could spend a whole week telling people who, but that's why I make you tell me too, because it's.
Just two. At least it's not just one. Um, so I went with a personal influence and then a professional influence. So personally, my personal influence is my wife, and I mean, just she is she's one of those people who just gives so much of herself, and she puts herself out there, and she doesn't always get the return that she deserves.
Aw.
And she is her passion is running, as I understand, and she's ran. Uh, I'm not. She's run marathons, and um, she did collegiate running and at
Wow.
Lock Haven, and she moves, and but it's more distance running, not necessarily sprinting. and
Gotcha.
it's something that she's kept on with and pushes her and puts her in a, she like always likes to, just like I like to go do different gigs and different music. She likes to do different races. They're different animals. They're different people along in the process that you meet, and different locations, and that's always nice. And I just find it in relation to what I do with the trumpet, it's very physical, and just to keep doing it, and just because that's what fulfills you. That's what I wouldn't say makes you whole, but it definitely contributes to. If you took that away, she wouldn't be the same person, or I wouldn't be the same person. Excuse me. So
So
I
running.
find I find that really inspiring, and I mean, I don't know. There's so many other things I could say. She
That's so sweet. So we're all
love
right.
to hear this because I'm not a very vocal person. I know I'm talkative here, but I'm about to go lay down after this. I just put a lot of the energy that I have channels through the instruments and that I do, or body language. So
She channels it through running, but so running is her art.
yeah,
Running's her art, and music is your art, and it's the similar energy, but her moving keeps you moving, huh? Keeps you.
yeah, and she's also very supportive, and I like that. I try to be the supportive for her, and not be overbearing, because having doing what I do, like, we're all our self critics, and we can be really heavy
Yeah.
on ourselves, and try not to put that out there. Trying to do the right touch, where like, hey, just go do what you want to do. I know it's gonna make you feel better, um, and she says the same for me. It's like, doesn't give me any grief for um obtaining other instruments or taking on certain things.
Got
There's a
another guitar. Is that another I know.
yeah, well, I'm in the process too of thinking about swapping my C trumpet out for another C trumpet that
Another
would
one.
just work better for me. Um, that's just kind of happened in the recent couple of days. But she's very supportive, and um, best friend. Pandemic, like, we're home together so much, and
Tell
you
me
know,
about it. My husband's above my head right
and
now.
your dog, yeah. And our cat's up here too, and he'll pop in every once in a while. But he's all this is just, we coexist really well together, and ultimately we're surrounding ourselves with people who bring out the best in us, and that's just that's what it has to be. You don't want to surround yourself with someone who brings out negative traits in you. You just always want to be a better version of yourself, and she always makes me want to be the best version of me.
Oh, all right. I'll edit this part out and I'll send it to you, and then you can show it to let her find it.
Yeah,
And
like watching a lot of The Office is like, when Jim asked the production crew, is like, hey, can you do this for me? They're just like, find the clips, please.
find the clip.
Uh,
That's really sweet. Oh, and it makes a difference. I have a very supportive spouse too. It does make a difference, and it's when your love, they love what you love, and you not necessarily that you're going to go out running, but you just.
well, I should, because I'm less active than I used to be, and I did pick up some weight the last 2 years, so it's, I need to get my activity levels up, but that means that she's right there to help.
She's right there to help. Yeah, I mean, she'll be excited and whatever for it. But it does make a difference. That's so sweet. All right, who's your second person?
A second one may be obvious to, if you listen to my music, there's influences from everywhere, and it's almost getting to the point where I don't know how to dial it back. It's individual is so ingrained in not just my instrument, but sort of his outlook on how his career moved, and everything. And we're talking. My wife was the personal, and this individual. I'm baiting you.
I'm
Not
like,
necessarily about his personal life, but it's more his career choices, and how it's Miles Davis. It's just,
Miles Davis.
he's a giant, and constantly listening, constantly experimenting, surrounding himself with people who keep him fresh. And it's like, if you listen to his playing, it's like his playing doesn't change that drastically, but the context in which his playing sits is what moves things around, which moves the music forward. And you know,
That's a great influence to have if you want to be influenced. I mean, you're
yeah.
right. So big. He's a he's just
Professionally, I mean, he's not the greatest human being, or
no, he's
wasn't.
not. I mean,
I,
um, this is true, but he's definitely king of his own musical kingdom there.
yeah.
Um, you're I cannot disagree with you there, but yeah, he probably could have used a little bit of life life
Yeah,
lesson.
I don't know. I mean, I have read his autobiography, and it's a trip. So
I'm sure. I'm sure.
if you have, you know what I mean. So, and it's written.
I have his biography sitting on my shelf. I don't even think I should read it. I think it's still wrapped in the clear plastic it arrived in.
It's written sort of in his speech, not necessarily, when I was a young boy kind of thing.
I
Another interesting autobiography is Mingus's autobiography, Beneath the Underdog,
oh,
because he doesn't necessarily Miles' autobiography kind of takes you chronologically through different things. He doesn't talk about like, what we did this recording session. It was more like life stuff and like, oh, we did this and that was fun and we did this and then I went to France and all his the life stuff. And then Mingus's autobiography is almost like he talks about himself as like in three stages of his life as like an old man, as sort of a young professional
and then an older man.
musician, and then as a boy. And he calls him, he
Huh.
refers to himself as my boy, as like himself as
Himself
like
as a boy,
like
but he
5 to 10 years old, but he doesn't say like when I was a young boy. He's like almost third person. It's like
huh.
and I never got a chance to finish that book because I had it from the library, and
You gotta take it back.
yeah, I had to give it back. And I was like, oh man, but it's Mingus is another one of those those characters that just there's a lot there.
A lot there. Okay, well, all right. So those are your two people. All right, now my last two questions are a little bit more have to do more with like how the foundation that the happy musician is built on, and it's the happy is such an easy word to for people to understand, but really it's about having what I call the growth mindset, being able to evolve, being able to thrive on challenge, being able to have a better understanding of your weaknesses and to thrive on those, and also having a very strong mental and emotional front when you have to deal with people, because being a musician is a lot of so it's mostly human relations. um
Yeah.
a musician, because we deal with so many different people, so many different things, under a lot of pressure most of the time. So these questions kind of not kind of, but these questions are built off of that foundation. So my first part of the question is, what is something that you do to stay happy in your art, in your profession?
Oh, I I think I just try to. I mean, it might sound simple. I just try to stay true to my roots, like we talked about earlier, with you know keeping an open ear and building on the roots, but also just moving forward and having conversations like this, where whether it be verbally or in music, jazz is improvisation is a lot of music. Just making sure, not making sure, but sat uh, not satisfying, because I feel like just you know keeping it up, keeping going, and staying true to yourself. I don't know, I'm not sure exactly how to
You're probably like trying not to say that. Well, it's
yeah, how to expand, yeah, define it with a definition kind of thing.
so when you stay true to yourself, but also you make sure that you keep momentum. Is that a word that
Yeah, yeah, you keep growing and you build on what you've built on, and you just I mean, wherever the direction takes you, it doesn't necessarily. I feel like if you set yourself up for a defined like something like, you know, part of gravitating towards jazz is because I didn't want to pursue a definitive sound on trumpet, like for, you know, for a lot of the understanding of a, you know, a 12-year-old. I was like, well, you have to sound like this. I was like, I don't want to. That's not me. I like some sounds more than others, and feel like I can differentiate pretty well, and kind of get to a point where I'm pinpointing. I don't know. I mean, to find that trumpet took many years to get, and I even say, I say to my wife, I say to Sarah, like, if that trumpet was destroyed tomorrow, I would have to get something to play to continue, but then it would restart. Like I would throw down to find something just like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it would just be essential. I had studio speakers blow out one day many years ago, and I couldn't do anything. So what I had to do is I checked in with some friends and say, hey, what would you recommend? And then within the next day, I had more speakers on order. And then, you know, I sat outside waiting for the FedEx truck.
Must have these speakers.
Yeah, because I was living in an apartment that was, you know, there were other units in there. And a lot of times they would knock on the door and no answer. And then they would just leave. And I was like, I can't afford that. You know, I need these now.
I'm not trying to give anybody free speakers.
Yeah, and also that was a day that I realized that small town mentality is like, oh, when the FedEx truck comes by, it's like there's only one FedEx truck that needs to drive through Silver Creek. In different FedExes, wait a minute, there are multiple FedEx trucks. It's on a different truck. Oh man. Yep. And then I was like, there's more than one mail truck. I mean, I knew that there were multiples, but like more than one UPS or whatever. What is going on?
You didn't need that many.
Like, well, I live in Philadelphia now, so it's quite a bit. I think that's staying true to musical roots. It transcends the music because, you know, just getting out of the city. Not that I necessarily want to move back to where I grew up, because I'm proud of where I came from, but I don't think there's as much opportunity for me to do what I do as I do it than here. Yeah. But, you know, I do miss seeing stars in the sky, and I miss sometimes how quiet sometimes things can be, you know, the negative space. You know, I'd like to have a little bit more space.
Yeah.
I realize through all this, I realize that I am very sensitive to environment, not necessarily like ecosystems, like, you know, trees and all that, but like just personal environment. Like at one point I had this room set up for some of the live broadcasts and live streams, and it's not a very big room, but I had so many stages of things and then stuff shoved behind the camera angle, and it was just like got to a certain point where I was like, I can't work in here anymore. I need to clear this out. I need some floor space. Right now I have it to a nice part. I mean, the window helps, but yeah, just listening to yourself and doing your best to figure out what might be missing and what to, you know, what to restore of yourself, so you can keep, you know, feeling like yourself, so you can again be your best self.
The best self. All right, cool. All right, here's the last question. This one is there's not really a wrong answer to this, so it shouldn't be too hard. But I know what a growth mindset means to me as the happy musician, but what does, you know, the phrase growth mindset, you know, mean to you? How would you, if you know, how is it? I mean, that's pretty much it. What does a growth mindset mean to you?
How does it manifest? How's it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to make it more difficult than it needs to be.
I can look up the now. In the perspective of music and the perspective of trumpet, because trumpet is a very physical instrument. The way I would kind of manifest the growth mindset would be thinking about improving the trumpet playing or whatever aspect in like just trying to get 1% better each day. And over the course of 100 days, you've gotten 100% better from that perspective. But it's, that it gets closer, the 1% gets smaller and smaller to get over. And I always think of an analogy when I tell my students, because when you start trumpet, there's a lot to unpack. There's so much to do physically, mentally, with your hands, with your body, with your air. I mean, there's so much. You can't overload someone in one lesson with all that information. It has to be spread across almost 4 or 5 lessons. But I have this image of a series of tubes, like you'd pour water in it, but they're all connected to the central bottom basin or central larger tube. You can't just fill one tube up and it stays up. It just, fills, it goes down, and then maybe the other tubes rise. So you have to almost keep adding water to each tube so that they all rise together. And that when you get, top off all your levels, and again, perspective of playing the trumpet, you're basically getting all of those aspects to like, let's just say 90%. If everything's at 90%, you're doing well. Something dips below to like in increments of 85%. Focus on that. Something else might dip below. So you kind of have to just keep juggling it. And then to move everything up that's the challenge, but you just need to, you can't do it all at once. You're not gonna master something overnight. It's gonna take a gradual practice. It's not like you're going to cram for a math exam and you're like, I need to know this formula. I memorized this formula. Great. And then you put it away and you never use it again. Well, that's not really how it works for a musical instrument.
No, in the music world, it's probably the one thing you can't cram for. And and it's definitely something, I like that analogy though, like having to keep all the levels and filling them up. And if one starts to dip, focus on that one, fill up that tube. One starts to fill up that tube, and trying to keep them all, level. I like that analogy.
If you practice what you're good at, you don't move forward. Right. And then what you're bad at just gets worse. And then then you're on somewhere like, I'll say I fell into that right before going to grad school at UArts. I was like, I am done with lip slurs. I don't need to do them ever again. They are my least favorite thing to do. And I stopped doing them, but as the semester went by, I was having difficulties with my flexibility, like getting around the horn. What fixes that? Lip slurs, lip flexibilities. I was having trouble with dexterity, and I wasn't working on. That's why I really developed those chromatic studies mostly for myself, just to get my hands in shape, because I'm not naturally, like, getting around the horn is difficult for me. Maybe it doesn't seem like it is, but I practice it. That's one of the things I practice every day. And, through various mistakes, like I've split my lip, and then
ouch,
like badly. And then I played on it for a week and it didn't fully recover for a good 8 months.
Oh,
so it might be hard to see, but I have the scar here. So I'm like, it's not as fleshy, as it's not as supported as other parts of my technique. So I start my practice routine, or really develop my practice routine around that point of starting with low impact buzzing, and then mouthpiece buzzing, and my pitch, because of this is holistic right here. Because of being in concert band and being 3 rows back, I not only rhythmically on top of the beat, but I tend to play a little sharp, and my ear drifts sharp. And it doesn't help that Kinda Blue is sped back up because they had a faulty tape machine. So it's almost 20 cents sharp. So some of my favorite recordings are sharp. So for me, I kind of developed everything to work on my pitch, which is why I tune with equal temperament and just tonic.
Right.
So all this together is like, I am hitting with my practice routine and with the trumpet, I'm hitting aspects of my playing they don't come as easy to me.
Well,
Things
that's
that come really easy to me is like I can hear through forms really well. I hear harmonies. I can almost
oh
tell
yeah,
you what the chord progressions are. I'm really good in mixed meters or compound meters or something like in improvising and talking. But to have that to make sure that those basic foundational connections,
are good. You have to work at it, and
yeah, they have to be there. And it might not be the most exciting thing to work on, but it allows me to do what I want to do.
exact. And but that's what a growth mindset is. So is you recognize the weaknesses, and you know, instead of them holding you back and being something that's a burden, you're like, well, this is what it is, and what do I need to do to work around it, strengthen it, get where I want to be? Because I'm doing this regardless of this weakness or not. I'm gonna do this. So what do I need to do it? So, but that's what it is. Lots of people with what they call the fixed mindset is they would look at that lip thing and be like, oh well, it's over.
Yeah. Or they'd start on an instrument because, I mean, equipment has, and it has not an effect. It affects how some things like better equipment or more suitable equipment works better for us. Like I was saying, I'm thinking of trading in my C trumpet for one that fits better with me because I'm used to certain things, and through working at the shop, I'm getting more in tune with what it is that works well for me that doesn't necessarily work well for other people.
Right.
And that way I can it's almost like enhance where I'm at. I mean, equipment's not the answer,
It's
but
not the answer, but like it does help, and that is the truth, and that's a fact. It does help. Better equipment does help, but honestly, you have to understand how you're going to make that equipment work the best for you, and that's ultimately how it works. But that was my last question. They weren't too painful. Didn't cause you too much pain, but I learned a lot about you. But I just want to say, first of all, I just want to say thanks again for being my guest, giving us a glimpse into the life that is Vince. And like I said, I'll cut out that little part for you to send to your wife. She'll just love it. You'll get some major brownie points. And I just want to tell everyone, like, the things that we talked about, those links are in the bio. They're on my website, and they will be under the video. I Vince, I could keep going on with you, obviously, but my dog's giving me that stare.
Uh-oh. That's why you want it to give you, you want your dog to give you that stare. So, hey, there's something going on, and I'm not allowed to do that.
Right, I'm not allowed.
So we need to figure this out now.
So I appreciate. You're right. I do appreciate this, because she's not going. I'm still gonna find a corner. She's like, listen, you got to help me out with this, and I'm not. But I just want to tell everyone thank you for watching the Happy Musician Vlogcast. And if you want to get it straight to your inbox, go to thehappymusician.com and subscribe. And also right now I'm running I'm giving away a free Happy Musician journal. So if you go and subscribe today, you can get that for free. So get on there and go do that. And we're all going to be looking for your new CD. That'll hopefully the next year or two will be out. But I will have purchase links for, what is the title of your CD? I have it here.
Adult Children.
Adult Children. That's pretty much like me. Okay, so I will have purchase links, and I mean purchase links for everyone, so you can purchase and download it. And I will also send people to your website to purchase the CD if they actually just want a CD too. So
sure, yeah.
All the information will be there, everyone. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Everyone stay well, stay safe, and stay happy. Bye.